in the world. That's the highest level. The more connected we feel, the more joyful we feel, the greater pleasure in our life. And that's why the most miserable we are is when we feel disconnected and alone in the world. So the greatest pleasure is feeling complete, like a feeling of connection to everybody, everything, the plants in this world, the people, the animals, and the source of all creation. So this is how, and the source of all creation is connected to everybody and everything. So that's basically the pleasure ladder that I love sharing, to help people have an awareness of how we go up, how adding more pleasures into our lives is how we overcome addictions. Yeah. Any questions about that?
Yes. So do you feel that those that have an addiction, whatever that may be, there's a 1, 2, 3 step to which pleasure they should attempt or try first, or in
Right.
order?
Yes. Well, not yes and no. Like, everybody is a uniquely beautiful soul, and everybody is drawn to particular pleasures more than other pleasures. Like, we're all completely unique. But what we do have in common is this pleasure ladder because we all have souls. We're all spiritual beings. So we all get more lasting pleasure as we go up this ladder of pleasure. But what in particular we pick to do is just what brings that particular person joy. Like, one person may get more joy out of being in nature, and one person may get more joy out of dancing, and one person may get more joy out of doing podcasts like you do. Everybody does something else and brings more meaning to the world. Everybody does something of their own. But if a person is feeling miserable and disconnected and knows that they're stuck in an addiction, then asking themselves the question, is it my body that's hungry or my soul, will help a person remember and recognize that they are a spiritual being clothed in a human body, and that they can reach for higher things that can bring them more lasting pleasure. So that's what I'm recommending. And there's nothing to lose. There's no money to spend on a diet. There's nothing a person has to buy. It's just all the person gains is, and let's say if it doesn't work, all you've gained is just another happy, joyful experience of doing something, So it does work, but I mean, it's just, there's no reason not to try it and experience that this is really the way to overcome addictions of all types. And there are people that may need some type of therapy, like, in other words, a spiritual nourishment may not be able to get through to some people because they have layers of garbage occluding their soul from shining, that may need to be removed in order for the nourishment to get through. In other words, people that have gone through abuse in childhood or neglect, severe traumas of different types, they may need additional therapy in addition to the spiritual nourishment in order for that nourishment to reach their souls. But still, the spiritual nourishment is beneficial for everybody. Whether it's all they need or not, they may need additional therapeutic help too to get over an addiction. But the spiritual nourishment is needed by everybody because we're all spiritual beings. Yeah.
Now, what for you? Was it just the spiritual?
Yes,
or
thank
were
God.
there others?
Yeah, thank God. Thank God. It's interesting because I thought I was so messed up when I was experiencing these crazy eating disorder behaviors. I thought that I was so crazy. And I went to visit, it's interesting, I went to visit this Japanese psychiatrist when I was in medical school. I told them all the bizarre behaviors I was doing, which I wrote about this in my memoirs. If anyone's interested, it's called Searching for God in the Garbage. And I wrote about, it's a very raw, candid it has my diary entries and the letters I wrote during that time period. So it's really raw, and it talks about the bizarre things I was doing during that time. So when I went to visit the psychiatrist, I said, like, I really think I'm crazy, you know. And the interesting thing is that this psychiatrist was able to see, I feel like I just met with the person once, and they were able to really see into my soul and say, you know, from what you're saying, it sounds like you're lacking something spiritually. That's what you're looking for. I mean, that was kind of amazing that this psychiatrist who just met me could see that. And it's true. Like, I thank God was blessed with a very loving childhood, really loving parents. And that's why I sort of see myself as like a control. When you keep all the other variables constant, and that's really all that was missing from my life, which was a really wonderful life. But I still felt like something was missing, which was crazy because, like, I really had a very sweet life, you know, and yet I felt like there was something more. What was it? I couldn't understand because my parents weren't into spirituality. They were really sweet, kind people, but they didn't relate to that. Like, so I, it's interesting that that was all that I needed. And that's why I found it so interesting that how was it that when I got the spiritual nourishment that I was craving, then suddenly my food addictions were no longer needed in my life. And that's why I wrote the book. And that's why I want to share this message with others, because why shouldn't, you know, it helps my soul to shine, to share it with other people, to know that it's such an essential ingredient in overcoming addiction. So essential that for me, it was all that I needed.
So you said a couple of pretty good points that intrigue a couple of questions. Now, with you kind of self-discovering that you had this addiction, what would you say to someone that just said, well, you just transferred from one addiction to another and made becoming spiritual and going down that path just a different style of an addiction?
Oh, an addiction, I think the definition that I learned is when life becomes unmanageable. And my life was really becoming unmanageable at that point. I was really miserable. And I mean, I know I don't have an addiction now because my life is full of joy, you know, so it's not at all unmanageable. And yeah, every day I look forward to. So it's not the same type of life. And also, I feel like my life is filled with choice. When a person has an addiction, they are actually stuck, and they actually don't have choices, like to break out of that addiction. They can't. They're kind, like I said, the body is in charge. A person is enslaved to their body when they have an addiction. And now my soul is really in charge, thank God. I mean, the body has requirements. It needs sleep, it needs food, it needs basic things. But my soul is able to get whatever nourishment it needs when it needs it now. So it's like a really joyful, pleasurable life. So it's definitely not trading one addiction for another. It's like a life in a different dimension on a much higher level.
So through that, you say your life was miserable and you were doing these behaviors. What behaviors were you were doing that made it very apparent to you that this was what was going on?
Like, for instance, I mean, one day, you know, I'd try to eat like 2 carrots, you know, and then a yogurt, you know, that was the day, because the next day I was eating like crazy amounts of food, you know, so then I try to make it was such an abnormal way of living. And the bizarre behavior that I write about in the book, it's awful to even still talk about. It's so funny. And when people that know me now read the memoir, they are like shocked. Like, they say, oh my gosh, it's so horrible that you were doing these things. But like, it doesn't bother me now. I mean, it is embarrassing, but it doesn't, because it's like, thank God that's who I used to be, and that's not who I am now. And people like are amazed that I could share these things in the book, but it's because I want to help other people. You're not, like I would steal things, to steal the food from somebody else's that they were saving, you know what I mean? Because I needed it right then. Ridiculous. And then the craziest part is where the title of the book comes from, Searching for God in the Garbage. I was, on days like I wouldn't bring food with me, so I would go through garbage pails looking for food, people had thrown away. And this is really interesting because at the end of the book, it's like a psychological mystery, because at the end of the book is when I saw the connection. Like, why was I doing that? And the reason I think I was doing it, because you learn this with, I don't know, Carl Jung and stuff, with different like crazy things a person does, mental illnesses or things that, again, it's the type of message. I was actually looking in the garbage for what still had value that was thrown away.
Now, through your journey of discovering this addiction and then getting to Jerusalem and finding the spiritual realm, what has, like, I get the whole spiritualness has helped you through this process. Is it the joy and the other things that you have now that you didn't have before, such as a family, a career? Is that what keeps you from relapsing, so to say, back into your addiction?
I don't know. Like, it's just like, I probably would have had those things, like a family and a nice job and stuff like that. That's where I was headed in life. But without the spiritual piece tying it all together, I felt like I was heading in just not a fulfilling enough direction in life. So the spirituality fills my entire life with meaning. Like when difficult things happen, it's a great question you're asking. It's a really good question, because when difficult things happen now, it's all within the framework. It's all within a spiritual framework that I understand it, so that I believe that there's an ultimate good to everything, like to life, and that we're here for an ultimate good purpose. So with a spiritual understanding. So it's a whole different kind of life, I feel. I think it's just a life lived, I don't know how to say it, with much more intense joy. So yeah.
Okay, sounds great. And where can people reach out to you to discuss your journey and to get your books?
Well, all of my books are in one spot. They're all on my Amazon author page. So if anybody looks up Bracha Gets, everything's there, and my contact information is there too. If anybody wants me, to contact me with any questions or for presentations, so you can contact me there. The Amazon author page is the best place to go. To the Bracha Gets Amazon author page. Yeah.
Sounds great. Well, thanks, Bracha, for coming on and speaking of your journey and helping everyone else out in a ways that they may not have known was an option. Okay, everyone, you just heard from Bracha Gets. If you're facing some type of addiction and you've reached to the point where you don't know where to go or what journeys or pathways to take, try hers. And if it does work for you, please let me know, whether it works for you in a year, 3 years, 6 years, whatever have you. Let me know if it works for you. I'm a person that I have a strong spiritual background. I have a strong spiritual background. I wouldn't say it's active. I definitely would not call myself a full-on spiritual person, but a lot what she said resonates and makes sense. And some of it, for me personally, I don't know if it would work for me. So if it works for you and you take a chance to use her methods to get over whatever addiction you may be facing, let a girl know. I'm your host, Rockshana. Today's guest was Bracha Gets. Tune in each week for a new episode, and remember, everything and anything goes. The sky's the limit.
Music for the Things of That Nature podcast